ברוכים הבאים לכולם מירושלים. The new episode of Israelities Podcast, live from Jerusalem.
Shalom lekulam from Jerusalem. Stefano here, and we are ready for a brand new episode of Israelities Podcast. Today, I have a friend in front of me, Oriel. That's you. Thank you for coming, for taking time, and for traveling with the bus to come to Jerusalem.
You're worth
just
it.
For our episode.
Yeah, we love Israelities.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, tell us more about you. Why you are on the show?
First of all, we're friends.
Yes.
So that helps. But my name is Oriel. I am 33. I am a bit of a mix of different things. I'm an independent writer, content creator, and journalist. And my life is very colorful in that way. Yeah.
You have so much experience, although you're very young. You are a person that, to my eyes, is not afraid of anything. You just go anywhere and everywhere, and we're going to talk about it more. What's your current occupation, actually?
Yeah, so I started about 2.5 years ago just as an independent writer. You could sort of say that I sort of stumbled into it by mistake. You don't often know the skills that you have until God sort of forces you to be like, okay, let's look at this and see what you can do. And I've always wanted to be very faithful with the talents that I have. And so I started as a writer. And then with having a background in media, I started creating video content for clients, which led to sort of the more journalistic reporter part of content creation. And then eventually that led me to actual reporting, correspondence, and journalism. So it was a bit of a 2.5-year journey, but I got there.
And I guess in Israel there is so much to report, right?
Goodness, so much. It's like you experience one thing, and if you don't report it quick enough, it's already yesterday's news, and it was only 2 hours ago. So yes, there's a lot to report.
But you have been involved also in biblical sites, archaeological sites, and tell us more about this project you have been through.
Yeah, so I do a sort of a combination. So it's sort of twofold. I'll have my personal vlog called Oriel in Israel, and then I'll also have videos that clients ask me to create, in which I'll go to different places and basically show them what's around. It's one thing, if you've ever been to Israel, you know that it's one thing to hear about something, but to actually see it and experience it, because you read it in the Bible, but when you have a visual to connect with it, it's so much more powerful and meaningful. So I'll go to the Western Wall. Today I'm going to go to Gai Ben Hinnom, which is where there was a lot of idol worshiping and child sacrifice, and what Israel has done with it now is completely different. So showing the whole spectrum of Israel and how rich and beautiful it is sort of something that I really like to delve into.
And what is your background? The way you are talking means you are a believer, you believe in God, and what's your understanding of Tanakh or the Bible, and tell us more your kind of religious background. I don't like this expression, but it's the first that came into my mind.
Yeah, religious background, that's fine. So I'm actually a third or fourth generation from both sides of a family of believers, which I'm very privileged. My mom is actually I'm in Israel. On my mom's side, I'm the fourth generation of Messianic believers in Israel, which is very rare. So my great-grandparents were saved after escaping Europe from the Holocaust. Mm-hmm. And on my dad's side, it was more Catholic, and then they became sort of more spirit-filled believers in his own life. And so I have this, very unique heritage that I'm very privileged to have. But I think it's only when you really believe for yourself that God loves you is when that sort of shift was for me. Because even though I grew up in a Messianic Jewish household with all the holidays and traditions and everything, I was still lacking the true understanding of what our faith is actually about, which is the understanding of not just the holiness of God, but the fact that He loves us. That's literally the first commandment is to love Him and to love our neighbor as ourselves. But you can't give what you don't have, right? Everything the way that we love, the way that we speak, all of that stems from whether or not we understand God loves us. Mm-hmm. And so that took a long time for me to really understand, wait a second, I'm not rejected by God. He does love me. And so hopefully everything I do stems from the love of God. I think that's what we aspire to do as believers. And that's a journey that we will always walk through. The love of God is not something to be, to put a deadline to understanding. It's something that we will always pursue the understanding of into eternity. There'll never be an end to understanding God's love.
And what about the passion that you have about what you're actually doing, reporting and video making, content creators? And where does it started? Your passion for your first camera, for the first experience on that?
It's funny because I always tell people I am the last person to want to be in front of a camera. I was not a confident person, didn't think I was beautiful, didn't think anyone wanted to watch me or to hear me. I was very insecure. I went through a very rough background in my life. And so I wasn't the first person to, take a selfie and to want to be in front of a camera and talk. But I did feel like I had something to say, but no real platform to say it. And so I think it was about 3 years ago, I was living in the States for about a year. And out of the blue, God says to me, you should open a YouTube channel. And I was like, huh? Like I was so taken aback, and it was so out of the blue that I didn't think anything of it. I was sort of like, okay, I don't really know what to do with that information. So I just sort of put it on the shelf. 2 weeks later, he says the same thing. I'm watching this YouTuber, and he says the same thing. You should open a YouTube channel. And I realized that he was so serious about it that if I didn't go through with that, I would be found disobedient. Like I need to open a YouTube channel. And I really had to take all of my insecurities aside of how I look and how I talk and don't think anyone's going to want to watch me, and just put it aside and say, God's not asking me for a specific amount of followers or views. He literally just told me to do this and be obedient. And so I grew in confidence within that. And I think in the beginning, I was apprehensive about the subject of Israel, even though my vlog is called Oriel in Israel. Still, it was sort of like, okay, I'm just going to show my life as a Messianic Jew. I'm going to get into politics, not anything too controversial. And even though still today I'm not very much into politics, even though I'm, a reporter, still I was sort of apprehensive, sort of like, okay, I'm just going to keep it as it is and not touch those subjects. And then the war came. And when the war came, I realized that even if I had a platform of, maybe a few thousand, I still have a responsibility to show the truth and the unbiased truth. And I think that that's something that people don't believe that you are unbiased, because how can you tell about yourself? But I showed the good, the bad, and the ugly. Like Israel is not perfect. Palestinians are not perfect. No one is perfect. And it's not about judging the other side or judging what's happening. It's more about prayer. It's about how can we support the world that we live in, because our enemies are to be loved. And that's something that I find really, really important, because I think one of the fears that I had about talking about that subject is the fear of exposing yourself to anti-Semitism, bullying. You're suddenly a target. And which completely happened. Okay. And I remember the first comments that I would get, my heart would start to pound. I'd be like, I would have flashbacks of me being bullied, throughout my childhood. And I had to ask God, what do I do with this? And so his solution was to pray for our enemies. And so I realized the first thing I have to do before I, delve into the comment and try to dissect it, don't dissect it. Literally just pray for the person. So at first you're praying with like fear. You're like, your heart is still pounding. And then eventually you sort of see the love of God behind your prayer. That this is a real person. Perhaps if they saw you face to face, they wouldn't say these things. Maybe they're not as brave, But still, like I can be as brave as to bless them. And so I got into the habit of praying for them every single time, to the point where now I've done, 2 YouTube lives, and people would say, really bad comments or dirty comments or anti-Semitic comments live, and I would just bless them on the spot. And I didn't have any fear in it. I felt like I was like on a mission to love. And so, yeah, the journey from being a person who was extremely camera shy, didn't think they had anything to offer, to realizing that it's not about what I have to offer, it's about how I am commanded to love. It's a night and day difference.
Is it, you're telling the story like it was simple, like to not react badly to those comments, but I believe it was a journey, right?
Completely a journey. And sometimes you respond, right? Like sometimes you do, because you understand that people really do believe lies. They believe propaganda, and you live here and you know the truth. And so sometimes I'll, hit back with some facts. But I rarely delete comments. Like I really do believe in free speech. You're allowed to. I won't receive other people bullying other people in my comments. That's not allowed. Yeah. But no, it wasn't a simple journey. It takes a lot of humbling of yourself and a lot of surrender.
Yeah. Because in one way, you know that it's wrong what the comment says.
Yeah.
But yeah, we are not fighting with human beings, right?
No.
This battle is more a spiritual battle that we have. I want you to tell our viewers and listeners your experience before moving to the war topic, going into biblical side. What's been the most successful project you had, or the one that God spoke to you the most? Like you're reading in the Bible, I don't know, Hebron or the Mount of Olives, something that you read in Scripture, and then actually you find yourself there recording and having a project or writing about that place. What's been the place that stand the most in your experience so far?
Actually, for me, I'm trying to think about all the places I've been. It seems insignificant, the place that I'm going to say, but for me, it held great significance. So you have the Western Wall, which everyone knows and probably goes to, but there's this little tiny hidden place called the Small Kotel, Kotel HaKatan, and it's basically the continuation of the Kotel towards the Muslim quarter, and not many people know about it. But what's cool about this place is that it's so quiet and so silent. And so during the holiday season, we have what's called slichot. So slichot is a period of time in which people are introspective about about forgiveness, basically, about what they've done, who they need to ask forgiveness for, what they need forgiveness for, all this stuff like that.
Which is the word in Hebrew to be sorry, right?
Yeah, slichot. Exactly, yeah, slicha is to be sorry. And so I was filming there the last time, and this is like the second or third time that I've been there. But it was on one of the evening of Slichot. So during Slichot, what people do is that they'll go to the Western Wall and basically pray there during the night. So it's like a midnight prayer time, and it's super special. Like if you guys ever have the opportunity to go on a Slichot excursion at the Old City, please go, because it's so unique.
Do you have any video in your vlogs on that?
Yes,
okay.
I do. You can probably just write Oriel in Israel Slichot and you'll find it.
Good.
And so the last time we are in during a time of war. The last time that I did this, I went there and I sort of felt disconnected from everything because we were under the threat of rocket attacks. And I was thinking to myself, what happens if we come here and literally thousands of people are praying and there's rocket, like, where do I go? Not that I'm afraid, but like there could be a stampede, like it's a lot of panic. And just because of the fact that everything was happening simultaneously, my mind was disconnected from what I was actually doing. I'm like, okay, I'm filming for myself or for a client. I just need to focus on what I'm doing. And I wasn't thinking about the fact that we're all literally gathering there for slichot because I felt like my heart was a bit numb. And so brace yourself for this one. I get there and I thought to myself, okay, Oriel, if there's one moment in this evening where you need to like be present, put down your camera, it's at the little kotel. And so I'm preparing to film. And then I feel, Stefano, this thing like on my head. And I'm like, is there like an AC unit outside of, somewhere? Like, is this water? I do this and it's not water. It's pigeon crap.
Okay.
Lovely. First time I've ever been crapped on in my life at the little kotel. And it's like a very sovereign place, like super sovereign and very, quiet and hushed tones. And the thing about it is on slichot, people feel very privileged to be able to touch the walls. And so this place, if you find it on slichot, it's like, wow, I get to touch the walls on a day of slichot where like no one is basically able to. It's like the best kept secret. So I feel super privileged, but now I'm suddenly dealing with this
natural thing.
Yes. And
unholy.
And so holy. If we were superstitious, they'd be like, oh, it's a double blessing. But I'm like, this is not a blessing. And so I took my water. Suddenly I'm on the side, slightly embarrassed, trying to not make a scene, getting all the stuff out. I'm smelly. Half of my hair is wet and matted. And I'm like, okay, I still have to film, right? And so I go to the wall and I'm very disheveled. I'm sort of not with it. And so I didn't have my moment with God like I wanted to. After that, we go to the kotel, and then sort of there, it's thousands and thousands of people. And I'm still sort of like numb with all the occurrences of the year, with the fact that I didn't have my moment there with God. And so I was really even more disconnected than before. There's this one part in these Slichot prayers, where they pray in Exodus when Moses bows down before God when his presence comes before him and he shows him who he is. And at that moment, thousands of people basically bow down, all of them together. And it was in that moment that my heart just went back, like, wait a second. Moses was going through so much in that moment, because 2 seconds before that, they were, he had gone for 40 days up the mountain to bring the Torah down to them, and they were there showing their gratitude to God by building an idol. Yeah. He was going through so much, and still the only thing that he sought was like, God, I can get through this as long as you're with me. If you show me who you are, I know that I can change. And I think that was sort of like a humbling moment for me to feel like, Oriel, you can go through the distractions and concerns of the war and your personal stuff in life and everything that you've gone through in the last year. But if you give him just this one moment, you don't have to understand. Your heart doesn't have to be completely like focused in it. You just have to show him, I'm here. Yeah. I might not be perfect, but I want you to show me who you are. So that was really meaningful to me.
That's great. You have been exposed to so many different experience like the one you just told us, but I want to move to like more the topic on the war. And you have been exposed also, your experience during a terroristic attack here in Jerusalem, and you were in the car. And would you tell us more about it? Like,
yeah,
you felt there were, I think, 11 people died on that terroristic attack.
There was, I think, at least one person that died and then a few that were injured. Yeah. So I was basically on my way to Jerusalem in a car. And the only reason that I was late to this sort of event that happened is because I didn't have my phone. I never leave my house without my phone. And so, I took my 20 seconds to go back up, take my phone and leave. And I'm going up the highway and suddenly we sort of all come to a very abrupt halt, but not in a place where there should be, an abrupt halt. Just a few hundred meters away, there is the checkpoint that goes on road number 1 that goes throughout, Israel all the way up to wherever. And it's a very main checkpoint. And so we suddenly come to a halt and I'm sort of thinking, okay, maybe something happened, not thinking way too much about it. And then I hear ambulances, sirens. I see Magav, which is like the border patrol, police. Everyone with a gun is just running suddenly, weaving themselves between these cars to get to wherever. I'm like, oh, okay, something has happened. This isn't normal. And you can certainly feel the tension of the environment, like the ambulances and the this and that, but I'm not seeing anything. So I go on the news and realize, 2 cars of terrorists basically intentionally caused an accident to crash into each other or crash into other cars to cause basically everyone to be blockaded in, went out with their guns and literally started shooting everyone that they could. Wow. A pregnant woman in a car, this person, that part. Like, if we, as Israeli citizens, didn't carry guns, they would have gotten to me within maybe 15 seconds. Wow. So I'm not seeing all this, but I'm literally just around the corner. Mm-hmm. If I wouldn't have left my phone, I would literally be right there next to them. So it was very intense. We were there for a very long time, but you feel very, very trapped because you're on a highway, you have nowhere to go. And so basically when we were all able to be released, when they took, the bodies or the injured to the hospital, I could see them bagging up a body, just sort of laying there on the floor. And I remember after that, I was very, I didn't feel shaken up in the moment so much. You were just sort of in it.
Yeah,
but after that, yes, when I got home, I felt sort of discombobulated and confused, couldn't keep a clear thought. And I was really, really, really struggling within myself. I go to sleep. The next day, I feel the exact same thing, but worse. And I feel sort of ashamed about it because I'm like, I was there, but I wasn't there. I didn't see them, but I saw stuff. And I think our soul really does react to our environment because it is a type of trauma, even if you weren't the person to see the terrorist with the gun, Yeah. And I literally had to just sort of admit to my family, like, I'm really struggling. I started to cry, like, I don't know why I feel this way. They said, listen, it's natural. Like, you went through something. You literally could have died if God didn't spare you, if you wouldn't have left your phone. And since then, I will, when I'm on the highway, if I'm driving and I see there's like a sudden abrupt stop, wow, my heart will be like, where do I go? What do I do? Like, I really had to work on it and be like, oh yeah, you're okay. God is with you. But yeah, that was an experience.
Yeah. And there are such a huge number of people that have been experiencing that and living that since October 7th.
Yeah.
And so for all of you, please continue to pray for our people here in the land. But you're a journalist as well, reporting journalist, and you have been doing so much. I mean, your vlog is amazing. Also following you on Instagram when you read the news, there is this like program that you do, reading the news with Israeli newspapers, and it's very clear, very well done. You're a pro on that. We all enjoy that. Thank you so much for doing that, to be a voice for all of us. But in your reporting, you have been also in several places where actually the 7th of October and the war broke out. Tell us some experience. I think for the Israelities podcast, what we want to tell our followers and listeners and viewers, depends if you are on Spotify right now or if you are on YouTube, what people actually experience. So you probably had the opportunity to interview or just to have conversations with people that were attacked, or people that were probably in the Nova Festival. Is there anything that you can tell us? Of course, not with names, but some more the experience, the emotions that you had and these people had.
Yeah. So on the 7th of October, I was in my apartment in Jerusalem and sort of experiencing it there. You have a sort of grasp of what people went through, but until you go there, you don't actually know. I'm not from the South. I'm a Jerusalemite. And so when I went there with a group of people, we stopped at different places where these atrocities had happened. And the first place that we stopped was a migunit. So a migunit is basically like a bomb shelter, but without a door. And so they'll put it next to bus stations and public places that people have a place to be safe. And me being the person with the camera, you're very, very focused on getting your shot. And so emotions sometimes, they're sort of late to come when you're in that situation. So I'm filming on the outside. You see this, beautifully painted migunit because they make it, beautiful. They'll put flowers on it or whatever with graffiti. And I go inside as I'm speaking to the camera, and then I realize, oh, they're not just showing me and the other tourists that this is like a bomb shelter. They're showing that something happened in this bomb shelter. So I go in and everything is, Stefano, riveted with bullet holes. Like every single place, like it's just covered with bullet holes and grenade explosions. You can literally see, this is like pure cement. You can literally see the grenade explosions and you suddenly realize that you're standing on it and you realize that people have died there.
What's the feeling there when you are there?
It's completely eerie. Like you also see like people have already been there because that it's not just a migunit anymore. It's a memorial place. Like that is someone's gravesite in a sense. And so you see candles, you see flowers, you see, stickers of like memory stickers for them. And it took my breath away. I was sort of like I started to shake, like people have died here. And it's just it's so cruel. The next place we went to was like a makeshift garage or sort of like junkyard for cars of October 7th. So any car that, people were shot in their cars were burnt, they were burnt alive in their cars. They would take all these cars and just bring them to this, big place, which eventually became this sort of graveyard for their cars. Usually what you would do in Israel is if someone had died in their car, you have Zaka, which is like an emergency response. We believe as Jews that no Jewish blood should be left overground, but it should always be buried. And so what they'll do with these cars usually is they'll take them, they'll disintegrate them in some kind of way, and then they'll bury it in the ground. With these cars, you literally see hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cars. And the burnt ones are stacked all upon each other in this sort of semicircle. And you can see police cars, you can see ambulances, you can see terrorist cars, you can see terrorist motorcycles. And they're just either there in like long, long rows, and there's no one there to claim them anymore. it was almost like the feeling when you go to like Yad Vashem. If you guys have ever been to Yad Vashem, it's a Holocaust museum remembrance, and they will show these packs, these stacks of shoes from that time. It was sort of the same feeling, like, is this the Holocaust all over again? And then we went to the Nova Festival place in Re'im, where, if you guys don't know, the Nova Festival was a festival of over, what was it? I don't know if it was thousands or at least over 1,000 something. It was many, many people.
There were many people.
And basically, terrorists came over the border and shot, raped, tortured, took hostage many, many people. There's over 300 people there that were murdered, and a lot that were kidnapped, taken hostage, and are still in Gaza today. And you see that how they did it is that they put basically a pole with the picture of every single person that was murdered there. And they're all around my age. And I found it really hard to look them in the eyes because they looked so alive in these photos. Like, these are real people that had lives just like me. They had hopes and aspirations, and they had their studies and what they wanted to do. And some of them were engaged or about to be engaged. And you think to yourself, that could have been me. There's no difference between them and me. I just happened to be somewhere else, then. And it was very somber knowing that in that place, it's very exposed. There was nowhere to run. You see the field in which that, there's famous videos of them running through this field, like just shooting above their heads, nowhere to run, nowhere to defend themselves. And so that was very eye-opening to know the amount of neglect that they might have felt because it was a holiday on that day. The army, the police are trying to get to them, but there's literally terrorist infiltrations everywhere preventing them to getting to those people. And then the fourth place that we went that day was actually the Sderot. We saw the Sderot police station where things happened, where people were shot in the middle of the road. Horrible things. They eventually took down, bulldozed completely down that police station because eventually it was just infested with terrorists. They just took it down with a tank in the middle of Sderot. So that was really hard to watch the footage of the people that were there and how they were just killed in the middle defending Sderot.
Did you manage to talk to any of the relatives, friends of the people that died when you went there?
No, not that day. I did for a different client, just happened to stumble upon people that were at the Nova Festival. They were just sitting at a cafe. We asked if we can ask them a question. And you realize that they were probably sitting there at that table because they were survivors. This was just a very short, time after it happened. And you could tell that they sort of felt disconnected, like people really don't understand. Yeah. They were hiding for hours. You don't know if you're going to make it home. You're there sitting, texting your parents, saying your last goodbyes. You really don't know if you're going to get home or not.
And few people commit suicide a few months later. We just had like a month ago a very young girl. I think it was 22. She committed suicide. She was in Nova Festival. She couldn't bear anymore. So it's still very, very heavy on so many people here in Israel. And it's good to talk about it. I mean, you're an expert just by the way you are expressing and telling the story. I can see images in my mind. You are very clear in that, and thank you so much for being here. Beyond that, we are still in the middle of the war, and the war is not just with tank and guns and grenades. There is so much happening on social media. You are there in first line on social media. So many news, they are coming either incompleted or not correct. Just recently with the supporters of Maccabi that were in Amsterdam, the very first news, it says the Jews or the Israelis have been attacked, and then a few hours later all over the place they say, yeah, but they were singing, they were doing this. We had the conversation the same day that happened. Why we cannot get the news like correctly, properly, and why there is this new wave, which is an old wave of anti-Semitism still in Europe, in United States, in the West, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think it has to do a lot with numbers. When you look at the amount of Jews that there actually are in the world, you think, okay, that's a very small amount. We're a few million in Israel, a few million abroad. And then when you look at our enemies, anyone who was against us, they're literally billions. And I don't want that to deter anyone from speaking the truth, because Yeshua was one person. He made a huge, huge, huge impact. He didn't need the backing of millions of people. He had one thing. He had his Father. And I try to remember that when I fight anti-Semitism, because in the long run, it won't matter. We know who's going to come out victorious. We know that we're going to have persecution in this world and in this life. And I think it's about your heart posture before God, being willing to say the truth when the truth is required of you. I'm not a naturally brave person. You said before, like, oh, you go and you're fearless and you're this and that. Yeah. I'm actually not. I used to have a very, extreme background of phobias from people. The fact that I'm sitting here talking with you is a miracle. I didn't think I'd ever be able to do that, let alone, stand for truth when people come against you about Jews, about Israel. And so that's something that's really important to understand, that even though there are much more that are against us, the power that we have behind us is stronger.
Correct.
We fight with truth. We fight with love. We fight with forgiveness. Those things really confuse people. And if we sort of take down the blinds of hatred, if we're standing in front of our enemy, we have to understand this person has a name. This person is extremely loved by God in ways that we will never know. And God is fighting for this person's life. And we as believers need to fight for that person's life with truth. Doesn't mean that we have to be, someone's punching bag. Doesn't mean that we have to act like we don't have a backbone.
Yeah,
no,
accepting everything.
We have a backbone. We can say the truth, but also, I love you and I wish you well. And I think that those are the things that eventually, we might not even see it during our lifetime or with that person. When that person lies on their deathbed, they'll have an opportunity, and God will bring to mind, to their memory, all those moments where someone could have hated them but chose love, because that was God's love. And you would hope that that would bring them into a place of repentance, that they would want to know that God and be saved by that God and repent. And so I think that's in the broad spectrum of things, that's what we have to remember. Our end goal is salvation.
Yeah, so not to focus too much in proving people wrong, but to continue to love them and to continue to show that the truth will set them free like He set us free.
And you can prove someone wrong, but the agenda is not to prove wrong.
Yeah, don't focus on that.
Right, yeah.
That's good. So in conclusion, I would like to ask you, how can we pray for you? How can we support you?
Thanks for asking. That's very nice. How can you pray? I really, I have a very small YouTube channel. If you're watching this by now, it's probably less than 6,000 people. My Instagram is not anything big. I'm not a huge promoter of myself, but I want this information to get to the right people. It's not about the amount of people. It's about the right people. And that's also my enemies. And so if you guys can pray that the things that I do would bear good fruit, that matters to me, that it would get to willing hearts, to receiving ears, and that God would make me humble, that I would represent Him well. I think that's the main thing.
Oriel, you are such a talented human being. We love you so much. You know that Joanne and I will just love you so much. And we are so grateful to have you in our life and also in the show. And I believe that God is going to open so many doors for you because you are so much talented. Thank you so much for taking time, for running the bus for an hour, more than an hour to come here. Thank you so much. And I know that through this episode, many people will be blessed and encouraged, and they will get to know right things, the truth, and also see the scenery here in Israel, which is beautiful. The pictures and the videos that you are doing on your blog, really, really amazing. So well done.
Thank you.
Please continue to do it. Don't stop. Don't be discouraged. I hope that this morning encourage you, that this day encourage you. And if you have any question for Oriel, you can just write to our email address, which is podcast@kkm.network. We have our Instagram page, which is Israelities Podcast. So you cannot miss it. Write to us, comment everything, and we will be very, very happy to reply and to answer to your doubt. For now, thank you so much, Oriel.
Thank you.
And shalom from Jerusalem.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Israelities Podcast. We'd love to hear your questions and comments at podcast@kkm.network. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Instagram. Shalom from Jerusalem.